Three, two, one.
Boom. Hello and welcome everybody out there in Facebook land. Thank you for joining us. This is the Build and Grow with Real Estate Show. My name is Judah Hoover. I am a realtor and a real estate investor. This right over here is Josh Weidman. He is a very sleep-deprived hard money lender and also a real estate investor. And this is the Build and Grow with Real Estate Show, where we come to you and talk about how to build your wealth in real estate and how to also have your career in real estate. Those are two separate things, but they complement each other very well. And I think that they are both things that you should be participating in. So Josh, why are you so sleep deprived?
Oh, man. Moving is the worst, isn't it? It's the worst. It's the worst. I mean, I forgot how bad it was, and I didn't move that long ago.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for joining us. By the way, guys, tag your friends when you're coming in here, either live or on replay. If you think other people should be watching this show or they think they should find value in it, please let them know. A good friend of mine shared a link with me this morning on a video that I had to watch, and I was very happy that I did. People will be happy if you share this link with them. Please tell them to check out the show. So you got the first half of your move done. So you're working on a house. It's not quite done, but you had to be out of the house where you are. So you.
That's great. Juggling. So I'm sitting in an Airbnb for 3 weeks, which is going to be interesting. But hey, it is what it is. Life goes on.
Moving is like one of those things where, like, getting it done is really only the beginning of the battle, because then you still have to get settled. Like moving day, even if you didn't move the dumb way you did here, where you're like kind of move into this like staging area, if you actually, even if you do like directly move, the moving day is like taking the beaches at Normandy. You got a foothold, but now we've still got to like move in and unpack everything and paint stuff. And I wanted to paint this room before I had all this stuff in here. Wouldn't have that been easier? But now I've got to actually paint it. So there's the moving in, and then there's the actual living there.
Well, Jeremy, what's up, man? So like this is the crazy.
Everyone has friends till moving day. Jeremy, truer words are never spoken.
It's not the carrying boxes out to the truck or the pod or whatever. It's all the prep work. And then all of the cleanup stuff after the fact, that it's like, I don't know about you, but like we'll clean on the Saturday. We'll clean our house and it takes like 2-3 hours, nothing crazy, or you have a cleaning crew come in, whatever. But when there's nothing in there, all of a sudden it's like every dust bunny that is in your house invades every single room of the house. So anyway, it is what it is. But I didn't get much sleep this weekend. It's okay. Life goes on. We're done.
Last cleaning joke that I have for everybody before we go is I really love the pickup truck bumper sticker you see occasionally. Yes, this is my pickup truck. No, I won't help you move.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So today we're talking about speculation. Josh and I both see a lot of speculation during a mature segment of the market like this. There's a lot of economic factors that lead to speculation, and there is a lot of personal and individual motivations that make somebody speculate. And sometimes people don't even recognize that they're speculating. And speculating is different than investing. When you buy $100,000 piece of real estate for $50,000, that is investing. When you buy $100,000 piece of real estate for $100,000 or even $105,000, thinking it's going to go to 120 or 130, that is speculating.
Yeah. When
you buy a $100,000 piece of real estate for $80,000 that needs $20,000 worth of investment work, that is still speculating. That is not investing. If the work plus the purchase price isn't less than the after repair value by a significant margin, you are speculating. You are on the day you close. You are hoping that during your 3 to 4 to 5 months worth of rehab, values will go up. And that is not a long-term safe strategy to invest with.
Well, and Judah, let's.
But I just wanted to define that term right up. Oh, it's the beautiful the Harrisburg waterfront you got there, my friend.
I know, it's awesome. All right, so look, this is where this came up. I mean, we were talking this morning about the show today, and it reminded me of a couple loan applications that I got over the last week, right? Where I'll have people call me and they'll say, "Okay, look, I got this deal that I want to run by you. Really low loan to value, really great deal. House doesn't need much work." So I'm like, "All right, let's look at it." And the investment is on paper. It looks great until you start digging. And what I'm seeing a lot of is unrealistic ARVs, where there'll be one house in a neighborhood that sells for $230,000, and everything else is 185 down to 25,000. But I'll have somebody walking in and saying, "Look, my ARV is 250 for a property in this neighborhood. Well, my agent told me, or this is what I think I can sell it for, or this is what it'll appraise for." Whatever the case might be, it's not based on real numbers, and it's easy enough to do in this market, right, Judah? I mean, let's be honest. If you're putting a house on the market and you think you can get 230, it's likely that, if that's the right price, you probably get 235, maybe even 240 because of the lack of inventory on the market.
Correct.
Yeah, right. But to say, okay, my exit strategy is 250 when there's nothing to support it, you're speculating that the market will continue to improve, and by the time your renovations are done, it'll be worth more. With that comes a lot of unrealistic construction. And Judah, as well as I do, that look, if you're comparing apples to apples and you look at that 235 or 240 ARV, you got to look at houses that sold for that amount, figure out what it's going to take your subject property and turn it into that house. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so I'm consistently seeing people contacting me about properties that they want to put light rehabs, carpet and paint for a lower end rental, and think that they're going to get the exit value of the highest stuff in the market. And you know what? They might, but it's not likely.
Yeah, number one, they might, but they also might not. And when you are using other people's money, specifically when you are using a hard money lender's money, you need to just not speculate. And there are deals you do with a hard money lender, and there are deals that you don't do with a hard money lender. And if your deal is a speculation deal and the only way you have to take it down is with a hard money lender, well, then that ain't the deal for you. And you've just got to move on. See, if you have your Uncle Bob's money tied up in a deal, or your money tied up in a deal, and it turns out you were wrong, and it's not really worth 250, it really is only worth 230, which is what the market and Josh and Jesus Christ himself in your dreams was telling you all this time, and it turns out that everyone was right about it. At least you can say to Uncle Bob, "Hey, listen, we're going to refinance. I'm not going to be able to get your money back, but I'm going to amortize this over time. And you and I are going to be partners on this deal. And it's going to be a kick-ass burr property. I'm going to be able to rent this thing for like $2,600, $2,800 a month and be able to put a great tenant in there. And we're going to pay this down and we're going to be in great shape." Your money is still going to be earning you a great rate of return. It's just going to be tied up for longer than what I was hoping.
Yeah. So, I mean, in today's show, beyond that, you know what we didn't even touch on? Harrisburg was named in January the number 7 hottest market in the U.S. And I'm going to show you how these play together as we go through the show today. But the bottom line here is that if you're thinking about speculating, there's only one way to do it. And that's that covers you for a lot of downturn. And even then, it is a very risky
Right. So since a lot of you are going to do it anyway, the right way. And also, if you have buck fever, deal fever, you've got to do a deal. And the only deals out there that you can find are a little bit speculative. At least be sure you're protecting yourself. I say keep powder dry. I've done deals that I wished I didn't do. It's not a good feeling. It's a lot of you guys know that I'm a parachutist. I go skydiving and things like that. And there's times that I've been under canopy and the wind conditions are weird and stuff like that. And I've been wishing I'm on the ground. Sailors say the same thing. It's better to be on dry ground wishing you were at sea instead of being at sea wishing you were on dry ground.
That's right.
Real estate parallel here is it's better to not be in a deal and wish you were in a deal as opposed to being in a deal and wishing you weren't. So, isn't it?
Well, it can be tough. I mean, so let's talk about the differences between investment and speculation, right? If you're investing in something, you are expecting a return based on past performance, right? Correct. So essentially it's a simple math equation. A plus B equals C. You got your purchase price, you got your renovation costs, and you have your exit value. Now, we know that the purchase price probably isn't going to change, but the renovation costs and exit value, they can fluctuate a little bit, right? So if the market is trending downward, your exit value might be a little bit lower than expected. If you get some unexpected repairs, the renovation costs can be a little bit higher. But generally speaking, if you go in with your eyes open, your purchase price, your exit values, your renovation costs, you're talking about a pretty conservative investment. It's a conservative upside. Obviously, you're not going to look at the market and say, okay, there's 5 houses that sold for 300,000 and no houses that sold for 350. But, hey, we're trending high. You're not going to be aggressive and say, all right, it's going to be worth 350, right? It's just conservative upside and a realistic downside. When you're looking at that same property, you say, all right, well, historically, this neighborhood's been really consistent. During a downturn, I can expect maybe a 5 or 7% drop in market values. So, if the market drops $20,000 in the 5-6 months that I own the place, well, hey, I'm still in a pretty good position. I might not make any money, but I'm still in a good position where I'll make $5,000 or $10,000. That's the worst case. And if the market continues to get better, I'll make $30,000 or $40,000. If it stays the same, I'm going to make my 30 grand. And if not, we go from there.
Correct. Another great way that you have protection here for your conservative downside is like what you were talking about earlier with realistic or unrealistic construction costs.
Yeah.
$30,000 rehab can always become a $35,000 or a $40,000 rehab, and it be part of the deal. Like that's just baked into the cake that, okay, you didn't necessarily do anything wrong. It just so happened that you thought the HVAC system was okay, and it turned out it wasn't. You thought the roof was okay, it turned out that it wasn't. You didn't know that when you opened up that wall, there was going to be this, that, and the other thing problem. And one of the ways, by the way, you mitigate that against that is don't do deals on 100-year-old houses. I've very rarely been surprised when I open up the walls of
I'm going to have to erase the rest of these slides. Go ahead.
Right. No, it's just one of the things that I'm just pointing out that that's investing. But even within investing, there can be downside risk. There can be problems. Even within investing, if you were going to do a BRRRR and you were looking to rent it out, maybe you don't get $1,800 a month. Maybe you only get $1,600 a month. Maybe your vacancy factor is a little bit higher. These things are part of the challenge. So don't beat yourself up if you hit a couple bumps along the way and say, geez, I was speculating when Josh and Judah told me to invest. No, even in investing, there's going to be some stuff that comes along and smacks you upside the head with reality.
And the biggest difference here between speculating and investing is the grounding of these facts or of these factors in some kind of fact, right? So like purchase price, but like renovation costs, if you don't know how to calculate the cost of renovations, bring in a contractor or 5. If you don't know what the value of the property is after the sale, look at comps. I mean, even if you have to look at Zillow, look for stuff that's selling close by and look at the quality of the finishes. It is definitely possible to identify the ARV, to identify your renovation costs, and make an offer that makes sense in a simple math formula. When you're speculating, what you end up with is you get A plus B equals fish.
Right.
Like, what? What are you talking about? It's essentially pulling numbers out of the air and hoping that they fit.
Right.
Hey, I think I can do this for 25 grand or 30 grand when really the number's 65. Yeah. Hey, I think I can sell this.
That feels like $15,000 for this kitchen.
Right.
People lick their finger, stick it into the air and say, it seems like.
Right. And right now, especially right now, where you have construction costs going up, you really need to have a foundation in renovations and in the ARV. Those are two really important factors. So, all right. The big thing here, a big contrast, speculation is aggressive upside, little or no consideration of the downside. I see that a lot. And the risk really is musical chairs. We're in a really competitive market where people are bidding up property values and, where they might have bought at 65 or 70 cents on the dollar minus construction in the past. Now it might be 75 or 80%. And you know what? Sometimes that can still work in higher priced markets, but it's very difficult in in a lot of the median home prices and things like that. So Judah, why do people speculate?
Well, number one, lack of knowledge, and I think that's a huge one that you have right there. Yes. Number one, they don't recognize that they're speculating. They don't recognize the danger of speculation. They don't know how to maybe do better marketing so that they're looking at 20 deals instead of only 5 deals, and they can find the 1 or 2 that aren't speculative. Yeah. You just need more common sense and more wisdom and more experience and to do more deals and to understand how to do a deal without speculating. And again, it comes back to the thing we were talking about earlier. It's not really on here. I'm kind of playing the game short, but I think a lot of people speculate because they don't recognize that they are, and they don't recognize the value, and they're hungry to do a deal. And so it's either sit on the sidelines and not do a deal, and they don't want to feel like they're one of those people who's afraid to take action. So they figure taking wrong action is better than taking no action. And yeah, I mean, I get that train of thought. You just got to be careful.
Well, and I think that goes hand in hand with the leverage piece. And
right.
Here's what I'm talking about with leverage. One of two things. Either you've got somebody who is new in the business. They've talked to a couple different people about investing, investing with them. Maybe their uncle or their brother or their cousin or a friend. And finally, the friend, after talking to them for 6 months, is like, you know what? I think we can do this. Let's do it. And who knows? Maybe they have 100 or 200,000 that they want to invest with somebody. Well, now it's like this. We get the go ahead. Now it's this frantic search for a property, and it's, oh man, if I don't invest this money soon, I'm going to lose it. Right. Or they got, let's say, a brokerage account, and they're they've got a margin account, or they've got a situation where they're borrowing at a certain rate of return, and they got to beat that return. They need to immediately reinvest those funds in order to continually making money or even breaking even. So people will push the limits of reasonable investment because they say, all right, well, I'm paying 3% on this line of credit. If I can get 8%, I'm good, or 10%, or whatever. Well, that can come back and bite you. Now you owe the money twice. It's not always fun.
Right.
But playing the short game is another one too, where I see people that they're acknowledging that there's a lot of speculation and there's a lot of development, and there is a likely downturn at some point in the future, but it's always a year off. It's always a little bit past their project horizon. And so, they don't really have a plan B. It's just like, all right, let's jump in. All right. So if you're going to speculate, if you're falling into one of these 3 categories, or even if you're not, and you decide, you know what, these guys don't know what they're talking about, I'm deciding to speculate. Here's what you got to do. Number 1, choose the right locations. And I'm going to advocate looking at developing markets. This is something that we're going to talk about in just a second, but developing markets are areas that go through a certain predefined cycle that's certainly identifiable with the type of demographic in a neighborhood. And they transition from C-class neighborhoods to A-class neighborhoods over a relatively short period of time.
Correct.
These are neighborhoods that are going to be close to stable areas. So if you've got a really nice pocket of properties, what's a good example here? I mean, typically, urban areas are the best to identify these because the difference of a couple blocks can be, in some cases, a few $100,000. If you're able to identify neighborhoods that are still distressed, excuse me, in markets that are close to a developed area, the likelihood is they're going to change. And you can identify these by looking at the demographics in the neighborhood and also looking at the price points and the history of that area. The other thing that you absolutely have to do if you're going to speculate, have a strong plan for your project and always have a plan B.
Correct.
So if you got to get in and out of these projects quickly so that before you buy, you have to know, hey, I'm ready to go. And then look at the opportunity to refi and rent. And if everything goes terrible, make sure that you can at least break even on the project.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a big one. And you want to find out, and you should specifically, when you probably hear people on podcasts and things like that, they talk about trying to break their deal. Yeah. What they're talking about is trying to figure out where that break-even point is. Yeah. Right. How much does the rehab cost have to go over budget before, when I refinance, my mortgage payment is so big that I'm breaking even? How much does my rent, I think I can rent it for $1,800, but how much below that does it have to rent for before I'm breaking even? Factoring in, some vacancy and maintenance and property management, or for a short period, even if I don't factor in any vacancy or maintenance, just my true, monthly break even. What's my worst case scenario here for what I'm going to be looking at? And when you try to break your deal and figure out where your break evens are on a number of different things, right? So say, how much does it have to, a lot of people, the only way they do this and the only place they look at this is, I think it'll sell for $350, but if it sells for $335, it still makes sense. Right. Don't just look at it that way. Look at it at other break points other than just sale price. What else can break your deal, and identify those up front.
Well, yeah, and what's interesting that you just brought up? That's about it's less than a 5% variance on your target price. 5%. I mean, that's nothing.
Right. And the problem is here's one of the ways that people get into speculation is because these are big numbers, somebody making $30,000 or $40,000 a year is like, oh, the difference between those numbers is my annual income.
Right.
And so it seems like it's a much bigger number than what it actually is.
Right. Exactly. So where do you invest? All right, developing markets. What do these areas look like? They're areas that have traditionally been blighted. We're going to look at some numbers in a developing market in Philadelphia that I'm really familiar with that, for years, dozens and dozens of years, this area was blighted. And in fact, when I first started investing there, I would walk away from livable properties at $30,000. A $20,000 house was pretty much what I was willing to pay. That's the jumping off point. But as you move forward, what you're really looking for are areas where you have a demographic shift. And this cycle, it happens in every city around the country. And it works like this. What you have first is you have the artists moving into these areas because they're cheap and they can get, studio space. They can get a cool looking apartment for a couple $100 a month. And guess what? They make it cool. So that attracts the students, and the students move in, and Again, it's cheap housing. There's
cool, interesting restaurants open up.
Well, not yet. That's
Okay.
the whole thing, is that if you are buying when cool restaurants are opening up, you miss the whole cycle. So you got artists and students. The students start graduating and they get jobs. And guess what? They're still young. They want to hang out with their friends. So they start buying houses or renting in these areas as young professionals. And as more and more young professionals get in there, next you have families. Now, families are the final stage in this cycle, because once the families start moving in, you start getting grocery stores, you start getting the cool restaurants, you start getting a lot more retail opening up in these areas. What you want to target is the transition between students and young professionals, because we're not speculating here. We don't want to be pioneers. What do they say, Judah? Pioneers take the arrows, something like that?
Right, yeah.
Right? We don't want to be pioneers. We want to piggyback and just make the money on it. We don't want the downside, right? So we're looking for that next hot market. And a lot of times, these are the type of areas that in the beginning, it's really hard to find deals, because there are already people that have said, you know what? People with deep pockets have looked at these areas and said, this is going to be the next hot market. We're going to invest $20 million over the next 5 or 10 years developing this area. And so they put in and they get their roots in these neighborhoods. But what you find is that if you're starting to market in these areas, you'll start getting phone calls, and follow up is so vital here. These people that are interested in selling, they want the relationship. And if you can develop that relationship with them over time, they might not sell to you today, but in 2 years, when values have already started going up, you're going to have the opportunity to pick off deals that nobody else can get to. So, this sounds a little bit difficult, but it's not really. Here's an area. This is what the numbers look like in that type of area. All right. So you're looking for cost-effective areas where, even if tomorrow, the neighborhood's not better, you're at least going to get cash flow off of it, right? They're cost-effective to buy really cheap. And I mean, one of my oh man, it's on my next slide. Okay.
What I love about this is I was looking at this slide earlier, and oftentimes developing markets today didn't really participate too much in the down cycle last time, because they already were pretty low.
Right. I mean, how much lower can they go? And you look at this, what we have here is I've got the lowest sales price, highest sales price, and the median sales price in this market. It's a 1/4 mile radius in West Philadelphia. And what you see here is in about 2014, if you look at this median home price, this is the orange line at the top. I'm sorry, the high sales price. The high sales price is going to lead the median sales price, because what ends up happening is you have a couple outliers. Somebody has to be the pioneer that goes in and says, you know what?
Right.
I'm going to gut rehab this thing and blow it out.
Right. Look, you can see right here is where, wait, I'm not sharing my screen.
Where is it? 2015.
Like 2013 is where that yellow line, that orange line starts to tick up. But the gray line doesn't start to tick up, and the blue line doesn't start to tick up until well into 2014.
That's right. And it doesn't see any noticeable and real significant
until 2017.
Right. But what we're looking at here, each one of these bars is $50,000.
Right.
And if you look, you look here, you got a median sales price right around 50 grand above or beyond for 10 years. And then in 2015, it starts to go up. And it's like a 50% increase in the value in the median home price in this neighborhood. And by the time we get to 2019, we're at about 125,000. That's what is that? 150% of the $50,000 median home price, and we're talking about over the course of 3 years. That's pretty significant,
right?
These areas. Here's why I like these areas so much. In times like today, and we saw this in 2008, in an area that starts to develop and get hot, if there is a downturn in the market and the crash, 2008 is a perfect example, where everything loses its value, guess what the first neighborhoods to recover are? These type of areas. They come back and they come back like a lion. They're double, triple the amount that they were selling for before the downturn. And the biggest thing here is you're really avoiding mistakes that you make during the buying process by buying in these type of locations. All right, so where to invest? Whoops, there we go. Or how to invest. You got to buy properties cheap, and this is where most of these areas are blighted neighborhoods. It's uncommon to go in and do a carpet and paint type rehab on these type of areas. So you're going to be heavy on construction. But guess what? When you're renovating a property like this, you have the opportunity to go in and replace everything.
Right.
Now your CapEx on that rental is pretty darn low. You've got a nice looking rental property that performs as it's supposed to because you have a new roof, windows, heating system, electrical, plumbing, HVAC. All of that stuff is in place. And I've even rehabbed properties that I know that my initial rehab is not going to be the same as my retail sale, right? But I'm using quality enough materials that, I might have to replace that laminate countertop with a granite countertop later on. Or I might have to, upgrade the bathroom a little bit, but not a lot. It's not a gut job. It's not, major expense down the road. So what you get here is you're buying. It's the Burr method. You're buying. You're going to renovate hard. You're going to rent the place out and refinance it, and you're going to sit. It'll cash flow at least decent for 6 months or 6 years. But then all of a sudden you have explosive growth over a very short period of time. And now you go from having a C grade property that cash flows a couple bucks a month to an A class property that either cash flows through the nose or yields you a significant return on that initial investment.
Yeah. And the whole goal there is to be ready to cash out and sell while everyone else is recognizing that that's a great neighborhood to buy in.
Yeah.
And everyone else says, oh my goodness, I want to be a part of that neighborhood. I want to buy in there. And it means that you might lose some of the continued upside potential, but also hopefully you're ready to take that money, enjoy your profits, and then go find the next neighborhood where that's going to happen. That's right.
And it never stops. One of the first guys I met in investing was this old Russian guy. And he used to tell me, he's like, a city is like a box full of marbles. And what happens here is like this neighborhood over here is developing. And it's like you're shifting those marbles around and you're shaking them up in the box. But the marbles are all the same. It's just people shifting from place to place to place. And I mean, in some markets like Baltimore City, that's been a concern for a lot of investors is like the new hot market keeps changing and is like getting stuck there. But I mean, it's been pretty strong growth. But I mean, that's what I always recommend in times like this, where there's so much competition. Sometimes going into the area that's right on the edge of development, where you've already seen some shift, but where the crowd isn't jumping on the bandwagon quite yet. You can pick up a property or 2 or 5 or 10 that end up being really huge returns over time, where they might not be a huge return today, but over a 5 or 10 year period, it's significant growth.
Correct. Yep. Well, listen, this was a great show. We hope that we helped everyone out here. We've got some great interviews coming up the rest of the week. That's our time here for today. But join us again on Thursday when we have an awesome interview. I think Craig is going to be with us from Baltimore, oddly enough. And then on Friday, we're going to be back with more content and timely, relevant news and how to use it and how it applies to real estate, which the goal there is to help give you guys nuggets to make you sound intelligent when you are out there doing your networking and talking with people.
That's right. Awesome.
I'm Judah. This is Josh. Thanks, everybody. Have yourselves a good day.
Go make some money. We'll see you Thursday. Thanks, guys.